Imagine this. It's midnight in medieval Europe. No electricity, no heating, no glass windows. The wind screams like a living creature, clawing through cracks in wooden walls. Snow presses against the door, heavy and relentless. The temperature has dropped so low that even breath feels dangerous. Now imagine you are a peasant, not a king, not a knight wrapped in fur. You own no fireplace large enough to warm the room. You have no spare blankets. You cannot afford firewood tonight because if you burn it now, you may starve later, and yet you must sleep. This is not comfort. This is survival. For medieval peasants, winter nights were not peaceful. They were battles long, silent battles against cold, hunger, disease, and death itself. Many never survived them, but some did. And how they did it may surprise you. This is the forgotten story of how ordinary people outwitted one of history's deadliest enemies, the cold. Between the 9th and 15th centuries, Europe endured what historians now call the Little Ice Age, a long period of colder than average temperatures. Winters were brutal, rivers froze solid, crops failed, entire villages vanished. For peasants who made up over 90% of the population, winter wasn't just uncomfortable, it was lethal. Hypothermia wasn't understood. Pneumonia had no name. Frostbite had no cure. If you fell sick in winter, chances were you didn't see spring. And yet peasants endured using intelligence born from desperation. A medieval peasant's home was usually a single-room hut made of wattle and daub wooden sticks packed with mud, straw, and animal dung. The roof was thatched with reeds or straw. The floor, bare earth. There were no chimneys. Smoke from the hearth drifted freely through the room and escaped through the roof. It burned the eyes, coated the lungs, and blackened the walls, but it also saved lives. That smoke did something critical. It trapped heat. Peasant homes were deliberately low-ceilinged and small. The smaller the space, the easier it was to keep warm. Comfort was irrelevant. Survival was everything. Fire was life, but also a gamble. Firewood was hard to gather in winter. Forests were often owned by lords, and peasants could be punished for stealing wood, so most families rationed their fire carefully. Many peasants allowed the fire to die at night. Why? Because burning wood while sleeping meant fewer hours of warmth during the day, and daytime cold could stop work, leading to hunger. So instead of fire, they turned to something else. Medieval peasants slept fully clothed, not pajamas, not nightgowns. They slept in their work clothes, layered wool tunics, leggings, and cloaks. Wool was priceless because it retained heat even when damp. Some peasants even slept wearing their hats. Why? Because the human body loses enormous heat through the head. They didn't know the science, but centuries of suffering taught them the truth. Sleep wasn't for rest, it was for heat conservation. Here's a truth modern people often find disturbing. Peasants slept together. Entire families, parents, children, sometimes grandparents shared the same bed or sleeping platform. In poorer homes, even animals slept indoors. Chickens, goats, sheep, not out of affection, but because body heat mattered. More than dignity. Animals acted like living furnaces. Their warmth raised the temperature of the room by precious degrees. The smell was unbearable. The noise constant. But it kept people alive. Its beds were sacks filled with straw, hay, or dried leaves. They were called pallets. I offered little softness, but excellent insulation. Straw trapped air, slowing heat loss from the body into the frozen ground. The downside? Fleas, lice, mice. Winter nights were filled with itching and movement beneath the blankets. Still, peasants preferred parasites to frostbite. Blankets were not cheap. Thick wool blanket could cost months of wages. Many families owned only one. It was shared, repaired endlessly, and guarded like treasure. Some blankets were so valuable they were listed in wills. If you lost your blanket, winter could kill you. Before bed, peasants often ate heavy, fatty foods if they had them. Thick bread, pottage, animal fat when available. Why? Because digestion produces heat. A full stomach helped the body stay warm through the night. Hunger made cold deadlier. Alcohol also played a role. Weak ale or cider was common. It created a temporary sensation of warmth but also increased heat loss. Peasants learned to drink just enough, never too much. When all else failed, peasants turned to prayer, not poetic prayers, but desperate ones. Winter was seen as God's trial. Cold was punishment. Survival was mercy. Families prayed before sleep, not for comfort, but simply to wake up. Many didn't. Morning was the real danger. Getting out of bed meant leaving shared warmth. Muscles stiffened. Breath smoked inside the hut. Sometimes water froze indoors. Some peasants delayed rising for hours, waiting for daylight warmth, however weak. Others had no choice. Animals needed feeding. Lords demanded labor. Hunger waited for no one. Winter did not care if you were tired. Winter didn't just bring cold, it brought isolation. When the cold deepened beyond what fire and blankets could fight, medieval peasants made a terrifying decision. They stopped going outside, not for hours, for days. During extreme cold snaps, stepping outdoors could be fatal. Skin cracked within minutes, fingers went numb. Wet clothing turned deadly, storm blinded the eyes. Roads vanished. Peasants learned through loss that unnecessary movement in winter was suicide. So they stayed inside, not comfortably, not safely, but strategically. Peasant homes were not airtight. Wind crept through every crack. So families sealed their homes using whatever they had. Rags stuffed into wall gaps, mud smeared over holes, animal dung packed along door frames, extra straw piled against walls that smelled awful. It looked primitive, but it worked. Even a few degrees of retained heat could mean survival. Windows, if they existed at all, were small holes covered with cloth, oiled parchment, or thin animal bladder. In winter, many peasants blocked them completely. Light was sacrificed for warmth. Days passed in near total darkness, broken only by the hearth's glow. Families measured time by hunger, not clocks. Children grew up believing winter was meant to be dark. Peasant clothing was not fashion, it was technology. Wool tunics were layered, sometimes 3 or 4 deep. Linen undergarments trapped air close to the skin. Cloaks acted like portable shelters. Most importantly, clothes were never washed in winter. Clean clothes lose insulation. Dirty wool full of oils and grime held heat better. To modern ears, this sounds disgusting. To medieval peasants, it was survival science. Peasants understood something soldiers still rely on today. Layers save lives. They layered linen against skin, wool above cloaks on top, blankets wrapped like armor at night. They slept wrapped like mummies. Movement was restricted, but warmth remained. Frostbite almost always began in the feet. Peasants stuffed shoes with straw rags, moss. Even dried grass socks were rare. Shoes were thin. Wet ground stole heat mercilessly. Some peasants slept with their feet inside sacks or wrapped them in spare clothing. To lose a foot to frostbite meant starvation later. You couldn't work. You couldn't walk to market. Winter amputated the poor slowly. Snow changed sound. Villages became eerily quiet. Footsteps vanished. Voices didn't carry. Even animals grew still. This silence wasn't peaceful. It was terrifying. Peasants believed evil spirits roamed in winter darkness. Wolves howled closer. Hunger made the mind fragile. Fear itself became a threat. Villages created unwritten winter laws. No one traveled alone. Fires were shared in emergencies. Food was rationed communally when possible. The sick were watched closely. Why? Because death spread fast in winter. If one family froze or starved, their tools, animals, and food were often redistributed, not out of cruelty, but necessity. Winter forced morality to bend. Cold weakened the body. Smoke filled lungs, damp clothes, bred illness. Peasants didn't know words like pneumonia or influenza, but they knew winter coughs killed. Children died first, elders followed. Some villages lost half their population after harsh winters. Mass graves were dug in frozen ground using axes instead of shovels. War came and went. Winter returned every year. War killed men. Winter killed everyone. Women, children, the old. Lords could flee to castles. Monks had stone walls. Peasants had mud and straw. Many medieval chronicles mention winter with more fear than invasions. Cold didn't negotiate. When reason failed, peasants turned to ritual. Iron objects were placed near doors to ward off cold spirits. Ashes were drawn into symbols near the hearth. Children were told stories of winter demons who stole warmth. Fear was given a face because an invisible enemy was harder to fight. The goal was simple: endure. Not thrive, not improve. Survive until spring. Every morning alive was a victory. Every night survived was proof that the cold had failed once again. Cold weakened the body, but hunger broke it. If winter was the enemy, starvation was its most loyal ally. By late winter, many peasant homes had nothing left. The grain bins were empty. Salted meat was gone. Root cellars had been picked clean. What remained was fear and impossible choices. Medieval peasants lived harvest to harvest. A bad summer meant a deadly winter, and there were many bad summers. Rain ruined crops. Frost came early. War trampled fields. Lords demanded rent regardless of famine. Winter didn't care why food was gone. When bread ran out, peasants ate what history later called famine foods. Things never meant to be eaten: tree bark, scraped and boiled acorns, leached to remove poison, nettles and weeds dug from frozen soil, moldy grain mixed with water, straw ground into flour like dust. Some of these foods caused sickness. Others barely fed the body, but they delayed death. In extreme winters, peasants made bread with less grain than filler. Flour was mixed with pea husks, ground grass, chaff, even powdered bones. The result was hard, bitter, and nearly inedible. But it filled the stomach hand. A full stomach stayed warmer. Starvation wasn't sudden. It took weeks. First came weakness, then dizziness, then swelling in the legs, then apathy. People stopped feeling cold because the body no longer had energy to fight it. This was often the final stage. Winter forced parents into choices modern people struggle to comprehend. Food was given first to working adults, young children. The elderly often refused food voluntarily, not because they wanted to die, but because they understood arithmetic. One less mouth could save a child. Many medieval wills mention this quietly: let the children eat. You might imagine starving peasants turning to theft. But winter made crime dangerous. Traveling to steal meant exposure to cold. Punishment meant death. Out. And villages remembered thieves. Isolation forced cooperation. Starving together was safer than being cast out alone. Movies show medieval people eating meat constantly. Peasants rarely did. Livestock was wealth. Animals were kept alive as long as possible. Killing a cow or goat for winter food meant losing milk, labor, future income. Meat was a last resort, and when it was eaten, nothing was wasted. During famines, historical records describe peasants eating cats, dogs, horses, rats, birds trapped indoors. This was not normal. It was desperation. Later, writers condemned it. Survivors remembered it quietly. Famine altered behavior. People became withdrawn. Conversations stopped. Laughter vanished. Hunger made people cold, even near fire. Some villages banned feasts and celebrations in winter, not out of piety, but respect for those who were dying. Churches sometimes opened grain stores. Monasteries fed the poor when they could, but even they ran out. Faith did not create food. Prayer was comfort, not calories. Many peasants didn't starve in midwinter. They starved in early spring. This was the hungry gap, when old food was gone and new crops were in tea ready. Snow melted. Hope returned. Bodies failed. Those who survived did so by eating less, not more, sharing misery, lowering expectations, accepting pain as normal. Winter reshaped their bodies and minds. They did not forget. Cold attacked the body. Hunger weakened it. But darkness broke the mind. Winter nights in medieval Europe were not just long, they were endless. In deep winter, daylight lasted only a few hours. The sun rose late, it set early. And when clouds covered the sky, entire days passed without real light. Peasants woke in darkness. They worked in darkness. They slept in darkness. Light was rare. Out. Darkness became familiar and feared. Peasants lived close to death year-round. But winter amplified fear. Wolves crept closer to villages, driven by hunger. Their howls echoed across frozen fields. Trees cracked loudly in the cold, sounding like footsteps or screams. The wind rattled walls like something trying to get in. To a medieval mind, this was not nature. It was something hunting. Peasants believed winter stripped away God's protection. Cold was associated with punishment, demons, and wandering spirits. Many believed that the souls of the dead walked freely during winter nights, especially those who had frozen or starved. Stories warned children, "Don't go outside after dark. Don't answer knocks at night. Don't follow voices in the snow." These were not just tales, they were survival rules. Fire was more than warmth, it was safety. As long as the fire burned, peasants believed evil could not cross the threshold. Even when wood was scarce, a single glowing ember was kept alive overnight. Families slept facing the hearth. If the fire died, panic followed, darkness. Without fire meant vulnerability. Snow absorbed sound, villages fell unnaturally quiet. This silence unnerved people more than storms. No birds, no insects, no distant voices. It's only breathing and crackling fire. The human brain does not like silence. Peasants reported hearing whispers, footsteps, or calling voices that weren't there. Modern psychology would call it isolation-induced hallucination. Medieval peasants called it spirits. Storytelling became essential, not entertainment therapy. Families told familiar tales again and again. Saints who survived winter trials. Clever peasants who outwitted death. Monsters defeated by patience, repetition, calmed fear. Familiar endings reminded people that survival was possible. Children fell asleep listening to voices, proof they weren't alone. Night was dangerous. Villages enforced curfews long before laws existed. Anyone wandering after dark was suspected of witchcraft, madness, or being cursed. Winter made communities inward-facing. Strangers were feared. Isolation preserved life, but it also bred suspicion. Winter shook belief. People prayed harder but also questioned silently. Why did God freeze children? Why did good people starve? Some believed winter was a test. Others believed it was proof that the world was broken. Doubt was dangerous. But so was blind faith. To survive mentally, peasants clung to routine. Same prayers, same meals, same chores. Routine created the illusion of control. Without it, despair crept in. And despair killed faster than cold. Many peasants went to sleep and never woke up. Dramatically, quietly. Families found bodies cold beside them in the morning. There was no Shakonli resignation. Death was an expected guest in winter. Despite everything, peasants endured. Not because they were fearless, but because hope, however fragile, remained. Spring had come before, might come again. For the medieval peasant, winter never truly ended. It just released its grip. The first signs weren't joyful bursts of spring. They were small, desperate whispers of survival. Snow softening, ice cracking, water dripping from the edge of a thatched roof. To our modern ears, these are just background noises. For them, each sound was a miracle, signal that maybe, just maybe, they had made it. Survival wasn't measured in seasons. It was measured in days, sometimes hours. Every thawing moment, every tiny break in the relentless cold, was another chance to live. Those who emerged from the darkness of winter were forever changed. They were thinner, their bodies gaunt from months of near starvation. They were weaker, muscles atrophied from inactivity. And they were older. Winter-aged people prematurely ill. Bones ached with a damp, deep-seated chill. Joints stiffened into painful reminders of the cold. Cough that started in December might linger until June, a ghost of the frost that had tried to claim them. Many never fully recovered. The scars of survival were both invisible and etched onto their very beings. But here's the cruel, ironic twist. Spring often killed as many as winter did. After months of malnourishment, a peasant's body was a fragile thing. The sudden demand for hard labor in the fields, plowing, sowing, rebuilding, was often too much. Their exhausted systems simply gave out. As villages reconnected, diseases that had been isolated by the snow now spread like wildfire through weakened populations. Floods from melting snow turned fields into muddy swamps, breeding sickness and ruining the first hopes of a harvest. The brutal truth was this: surviving winter didn't guarantee you'd survive its aftermath. This constant battle against the cold didn't just shape their bodies, it shaped their entire culture, their very way of thinking. Winter taught lessons that no book ever could. It taught patience over ambition. You couldn't rush the thaw. It taught endurance over comfort. Comfort was a fleeting luxury. Endurance was a daily necessity. And most importantly, it taught community over individuality. You couldn't survive the deep freeze alone. These weren't lofty philosophies discussed by scholars. They were the hard, practical rules for staying alive. This vital knowledge was passed down not in writing, but orally, from one generation to the next. It wasn't taught as a formal lesson. It was woven into the fabric of daily life, absorbed as habit. Children learned how to layer their rough-spun clothes, instinctively how to ration a meager portion of food, without even thinking about it, how to read the sky and feel the air, to recognize the signs of a dangerous, life-threatening cold. This ingrained, unspoken knowledge was the thread that kept families and entire villages from unraveling. For them, cold wasn't an inconvenience you complained about. It was a primal force of nature, an entity to be respected, even feared. They planned their entire lives around it. Marriages were celebrated in the warmer months. Festivals were timed to avoid the deepest winter when possible. Think about it. We plan our vacations. They plan their survival. The difference is staggering. Today we barely think about it. We flip a switch and light floods the room. We turn a knob and warmth fills our homes almost instantly. We live our lives wrapped in a complex web of systems, all designed to shield us from the very thing that routinely killed our ancestors. For most of human history, warmth was something you earned every single night, a precious resource that could be lost by morning. Understanding the medieval winter isn't about romanticizing the past or feeling nostalgic for a harder time. It's about gaining perspective. It's about recognizing that our ancestors were not weak or primitive. They were extraordinarily, almost unbelievably, resilient. They endured conditions that would overwhelm our modern, sophisticated society in a matter of days. You won't find grand monuments to these anonymous peasants. There are no statues dedicated to the mothers who gave their last piece of bread to a child. No epic songs written for the families who huddled together and survived another brutal night in silent solidarity. Their names are lost to history. Yet, they are the ones who carried humanity forward on their weary shoulders. Their quiet, stubborn survival is the foundational reason that we are here today. Medieval peasants didn't conquer winter. You can't conquer a force of nature. They endured it, night after night, cold after cold, generation after generation. And that endurance, more than any king's strength, more than any merchant's wealth, was humanity's greatest and most essential weapon. So tonight, when you pull a blanket a little closer, when you feel that wave of warmth from the heater kick on, take just a moment. Remember those who survived without either. Remember the silent strength it took just to see another sunrise. If this piece of forgotten history moved you, consider subscribing. Let's keep these essential stories of human resilience alive. Thank you for listening.